Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the NEXTLOOPP webinar. We're so pleased to be able to talk to everyone around the world. Hopefully our colleagues in Australasia and the Asia Pacific region will be able to tune into this webinar at a much more reasonable time than the last one, which was running for the European and US time zones. We're really pleased that we don't have to use our protective masks for this webinar. It's all happening remotely, so this is completely safe. And let's hope that everyone can hear me. We know that's the most favourite phrase of the world. He's on mute. Can you hear me? And so let's hope everyone can actually hear me while we're going through the webinar. It's really exciting to be able to talk about this multi-client project that we're launching today globally. We've been working on the recycling of polypropylene for over 8 years to put all the steps in place. We're really excited to be able to say we now have a fully tested, fully industrialized process to offer everybody. And we're now going to start by making a multi-client project to start delivering material to everybody who needs and wants recycled food-grade polypropylene. And of course, polypropylene's been one of the wonder materials of the plastics world. When it was first invented in Italy in the 1950s, the early 1950s, it promised so much. It was very stiff compared to the other polyolefins. It had quite good strength. It had amazing insolubility to so many materials. It could be made super tough. It was virtually transparent then, but now we've got very nice random copolymer grades that are virtually transparent with water clarity. And of course, polypropylene is used in our safety masks as fibers. It's used in the sheet, in pot stubs and trays. It's used in many industrial moldings. It's used in the automotive sector. It's used in appliances. And most importantly, it's used in packaging. How big is the PP market? It's huge. It's 20% of the world's production of plastics. 56 million tonnes in 2018, growing to 83 million tonnes by 2025. And Europe alone, we use over 10 million tonnes. Europe is 20% of the world's production. If you take Asia, including China, this is 50% of the world's production. So the volumes used in the Australasian, Asian area exceed that of Europe. And you can imagine 20% of the world's production is a very substantial figure. We're talking over 70 million tonnes globally, and so it's a big number. Okay, so I have some numbers for Europe. You know, we often work in the United Kingdom, but we have offices in India and Australia. And you can see in Europe, the capacity for polypropylene varies from 2 million tonnes in Germany, 1.5 million in Italy, and France and the UK around the 700 to 800,000 tonnes per annum. And in the UK, that equates to something like 10 kilos per head of population. We touch polypropylene every day, from the moment you brush your teeth, to if you open a bottle with a cap on it, to if you're packing the kids' lunches together or using a butter dish, it's polypropylene time and time again. And of course, where do we use polypropylene? 40% typically is used in packaging. So based on the UK, the European statistics, 44% ends up in packaging applications, which is why this project, the NEXTLOOPP multi-client project, has been started, because these materials are they live for a short time, and then frequently they go to an end use, which could be recycling, but very frequently it goes to other applications which are not as attractive, like landfill or waste to energy. If we have a look at some statistics for the UK, because we know what these numbers are like, and we can quote these with certainty. Of the 700,000 tonnes of polypropylene that was put on the market in 2019, nearly 300,000 tonnes was in the packaging market. And 70% of that is food packaging, so approximately 200,000 tonnes. And we know 61,000 tonnes of pots, tubs and trays are collected for recycling. So that's as the raw material. The demand for recycled polypropylene is 114,000, and these are validated numbers. And we know of the non-bottle rigid packaging waste, this is the pots, tubs and trays that are collected from households, 40% is polypropylene. So in many cases, the non-recycled fraction, in other words, the non-bottle fraction, most of that is polypropylene. The other bit is PET, of course, and polystyrene. So what is NextLoop? NextLoop is a project we want you to come and join. If you have an interest in food grade recycled polypropylene, then we'd like to hear from you at the end of the webinar and register your interest so we can actually take it further. It's free to register your interest, and we'll talk about how the project will be run later on. But this is all about the next loop for polypropylene. And of course, food grade is not a simple process to achieve, and we'll talk about some of those challenges in a moment. And of course, the whole reason that we're putting up the NextLoop multi-client project is to help companies reach their packaging targets. We know we have a proven mechanical recycling process that can decontaminate post-consumer materials, and we have a proven sorting technology so we can split food grade from non-food grade. And we know that globally, brand owners around the world, and here are some of them, have made commitments to put recycled content into their packaging. They want their packaging to be recyclable, and they want recycled content to be in there. And they're typically saying they want 25% by 2025. This is basically 4 years away. When you look at the targets, these are really big targets, and there needs to be a lot of progress to reach those targets. And we hope NextLoop can help brand owners reach these very important milestones in the way we look after packaging. We've spoken to retailers in the United Kingdom, so the supermarkets have all been very enthusiastic in their response in welcoming an initiative like NextLoop. Marks and Spencer are very keen to see closed loop systems available for them to use in their packaging. Co-op are looking to use 50% recycled content in all plastic containers where possible. So they have expressed interest already to join the NextLoop program and very keen to go ahead. Tesco, with whom we're working on many other initiatives, also see the big advantages of food grade recycled PP, but they're aware that this material is very hard to come by. So they do support what we're doing. Morrisons and Iceland, both companies that are very aware of the consumer reaction to plastics, and they want to see recycled loops for food grade recycled polypropylene. And the other option is that polypropylene becomes switched into another material like PET. And so we're so pleased that we're getting this pull from the supermarkets to have an initiative like NextLoop deliver materials to the converters. So to formally state our mission, we're trying to create a circular food grade recycling polypropylene from post-consumer packaging. That's quite clear. And the steps along the way are also, for us, quite clear. We want to develop a supply chain model for the collection, sorting and reprocessing of food grade PP. And this will be done with efficient manufacturing processes to make high quality and food grade PP. And this will be made in pilot and large scale operations. We think this is the way to go. Pilot first. And then the recycled PP will be used in a wide range of processes and products to meet the packaging targets that we just spoke about. Along the way, there are a series of steps that we've mapped out, which will be part of the work packages that the NextLoop project will address. And briefly, they are to develop the infrastructure for recycling in the major population centres, to produce a food grade PP for reuse into consumer products, including cosmetics and food, very clear targets for us. We want to establish clear certification by EFSA and US FDA for the manufacturing processes that we're defining. And we want to start the recovery of branded polypropylene products for recycling. The processes we have, we know, can be improved further, and this will boost their economic efficiency and reduce their cost. We want to develop specific grades of recycled PP for film, for sheet, for extrusion applications, thermoforming, blow molding, and injection molding. We know that each of those applications needs tailoring to meet their specific requirements. We want to develop solutions that maximize the recycled content to give the processing companies stability in monolayer and multi-layer structures. And most importantly, we want to help produce new design guidelines for food grade recycling for brand owners and for retailers and converters, so that we can create a new loop for these materials, so that it will make the challenge of recycling food grade materials easier as we go through the various cycles. I want you to hear from two people in the United Kingdom who will talk about the potential and the challenges of NEXTLOOPP. Sally Beacon from KTN, which is part of Innovate UK, and also Peter Maddox, a director of RAP.
The need for a food grade recycled polypropylene, well, we should, first of all, just as a moral reason, we shouldn't be wasting valuable material. Most of it's going to landfill or incineration. But right now, more urgent, it's being driven by legislation. So this March, the UK budget announcement of a proposed plastics packaging tax will mean that there's actually a driver towards needing recycled grade materials, and that's around £200 a tonne. So it's a need and a moral obligation, I believe.
Well, I think first to say it's really important that polypropylene is a really valuable and versatile material. We've got some amazing barrier properties, which is why it is so widely used in food packaging. I think the challenge is that currently all food grade post-consumer packaging is currently downcycled to non-food grade materials. So it goes into pallets, trays, crates, and it even goes into the automotive sector. That's the challenge for polypropylene packaging.
So Peter reminded us of the challenges, and indeed we have a series of challenges to overcome. We need to be very clear that the feedstocks need to be sorted to greater than 95% food grade polypropylene. We need to acquire the EFSA accreditation, which requires detailed documentation. It requires quite important challenge tests to be performed showing high decontamination rates. We need the grades of polypropylene to meet the migration test conditions that all the products will require. The processes we use must be economic and competitive with other recycling solutions. And of course, we have to develop those grades for all the various processing techniques I mentioned earlier. And we need to meet the requirements of the cosmetics industry. And here we're going to be developing an inert grade of recycled PP, which will meet all of the challenges of migration that the cosmetics industry faces in the various formats. So what solutions do we have to these challenges already? We've made a lot of progress over the last 8 years. We've demonstrated the recycling process. We've demonstrated the decontamination techniques to very high levels. And we know we can meet the standards for EFSA and US FDA for food contact. And we know we can use NEXTLOOPP recycled polypropylene in all aqueous, acidic and alcoholic applications. It's more challenging with the oily migration conditions, and we can meet quite a few of them as well. Initially, the feedstocks will come from closed loop sources because we can actually test the processes and demonstrate the efficiency of the whole technique. But subsequent to that, we'll be using commercial sorting centres to sort packaging from the waste stream using markers and labels with fully proven PRISM technology. And we have already successfully demonstrated production using recycled polypropylene in sheet lines and injection molding. So we know we have addressed some of the challenges that already face us. Some of the products we've made are shown here with 50% recycled content. In some of the products, we have a clear and a colored grade. And of course, the challenge will be to see how far we can go with the options about how we handle the polypropylene. The clear and colored issue is a big one, and the recycled content limits are another important point. Here's some of the properties of the clear and colored food grade recycled polypropylenes that we've made. And if you look at the properties, the melt index, the tensile strengths, the modulus, the impacts are comparable to some of the medium impact grades of virgin polypropylene. So we know we can actually displace polypropylene in the applications. And this is shown up in the recycling trials, which need to be, of course, very carefully planned and controlled. On the food grade side, we have a letter from Steptoe and Johnson, who are lawyers that specialize in food contact regulations. They've examined all of our analytical data, and they have stated very clearly that the food grade recycled PP resin meets the regulatory requirements for EFSA and US FDA for direct food contact applications. Now, this is an amazing achievement because very few materials from the post-consumer area can actually make that claim. In the sorting area, we've been working on the PRISM system for markers for the last 4 to 5 years from the inception point. And now we can say that in a single step, we can reach 95% purity with a single sort. And if we then take a second sort, we can reach greater than 99% purity. And this is all done at 3 meters a second of belt speed and 2 tons per hour per meter width of belt. So these are fully commercial speeds and throughputs. And of course, while we're going to be focusing on polypropylene in the NEXTLOOPP project, we know we can apply this technology to HDPE milk bottles, to PET bottles, and we can use it in many other ways as well. It's a very flexible system. I'm going to show you a video of this at work, and you will see here bottles that are marked with visibly red and visibly blue sleeves mixed in with post-consumer packaging and completely combined with these materials. They're all flattened, and then we're sorting these using ultraviolet light as the initiator for the fluorescence, and that fluorescence enables selection of the marked bottles. And so we're getting, in this case, 96% separation in the first step. And of course, if we resort, we'll go to even higher purity levels. So this is technology which is plug and play ready. Now we're going to hear from George Fern from Brunel University, who was one of our specialists in our PRISM project, working on the fluorescent markers.
It can have a major positive influence on recycling. What I like about the technology is that the home consumer doesn't have to do anything different for their plastics to be recycled, so long as they leave the PRISM label on the packaging. So as long as you put in your waste, general waste, like I do here, into my general recyclables refuse collection, and ultimately that will find its way to the plastic recycling plant, and using the PRISM label, that will be automatic recycled.
And as a demonstration of the plug and play readiness of this system, our team went to a general purpose recycler in Germany, where they have a TOMRA unit installed, and within 1 hour we retrofitted the UV illumination and the software to the system and started sorting fluorescent marked bottles. And prior to that, they'd never seen these sorts of systems. This shows you that this is plug and play ready. Now we're going to hear from Dr. Ralph Euping from TOMRA about the challenges and the potential of a project and technology like NEXTLOOPP.
I can think of 2 barriers. So the first one is the missing certified recycling processes certified by the EFSA. And the second barrier I see is how to get food plastic separated from non-food. So this can be first organizational, like in PET with deposit system, collecting it separately. But technically, it could also be sensor-based sorters, which are able to distinguish between food grade or non-food. And these are the barriers, I think, which are missing. If we want to tackle the plastic problem, then we need to invest into technology here, because the potential is quite big. And I do not see any reason from a technical point of view why we could not achieve with polyprop what we have already achieved with PET. So there's the technology on the one side, but of course at the same time the technology needs to address the concerns or the regulations of the EFSA.
Indeed, and we hope that the NextLOOPP multi-client project will bring benefits to the companies that participate. We know we're going to have a knowledge pool which will be available for sharing to boost the recyclability of polypropylene packaging. We're going to be providing a pathway for circular PP to brand owners so that they can actually close the loop on their packaging. We will establish pilot facilities that can start the manufacturing of recycled polypropylene, and we will participate in research projects such as the Smart Sustainable Plastic Packaging Challenge via the collaborative and large-scale demonstration research grant applications. We're going to have the opportunity to provide materials for early production of packaging with food-grade recycled content. And with the group, we will have the capacity to solve many of the problems encountered in the recycling of polypropylene materials. We're going to hear now from Jude Allen of the Institute of Materials, and also again from Sally Beacon from KTN about why we should be doing projects like NextLOOPP and also what the potential might be.
So the obvious answer of why it's important to work towards the increase of recycling of PP is to save the world from plastic pollution. And the second, slightly more detailed thing is about there's some circular economic principles that is just so important to try and keep materials in use. Materials have value, and if we can realise the value, then why throw it away? We want to keep plastic in the economy and out of the natural environment. And anything that works towards increasing the recycling of materials is in an effective and economic way. It's got to be a good thing.
It is difficult to track and separate polypropylene, and it's quite difficult technically in this particular aspect because polypropylene packaging might be used for food grade material, or it might be used for cosmetics or laundry and detergents, for example. And to get through the EU regulations to achieve a food grade, recycled polypropylene grade, you need to be using just the material that's come from the food waste stream and not from the chemical and laundry detergents waste stream. So there's innovation required, and that's where this Smart Sustainable Plastic Packaging Challenge comes into play. It's to support consortia and businesses that need resource and collaborative partnerships in this area.
And our final reference is from Recoup, which is a national organisation representing the way we can boost the recycling of plastics packaging. And Stuart Foster, the CEO, supports the NextLOOPP program and sees this as one of the next steps in the development of circular pathways for packaging materials. We're very pleased to have his support. And in rounding up the webinar, I want to acknowledge all of the people who have made contributions to our program today and to thank them for their very frank views. And we're so pleased that we know that we're heading in the right direction. Also, I want to thank the NextLOOPP team who have made this all possible. Lots of hard work behind the scenes, as you all know. So we're now going to switch to the Q&A sessions. And if you give me a moment, I'll log into the system so I can actually see your online questions. And we have a few minutes to answer as many as we can. And in the near future, if we don't answer your question, we will come back and give you an email response to your question. So let me quickly go back to the system. Okay, so we have a question from Sam about the infrastructure in Asia versus the infrastructure in the United Kingdom. Actually, what we can do in Asia will be quite amazing because we can simply use some of the techniques that they use in Asia right now with manual sorting to give us the feedstock that we require. And we know that this is possible, and we just simply couple that up with the technologies for decontamination. So we can make recycled PP in the Asian Pacific region just as readily as we can in Europe. So very happy to hear from people on this topic. We have a question here on the size of the label. Well, we've been very interested to quantify this. We've done experiments on the influence of the size of the label relative to the size of the package, and we can get down to a very small fraction of the package. And we have details which we will release in our next stage of discussions with people who register their interest on precisely what those limits are. But you'll be impressed by how little we need to identify a package at high speed. And we have here a question about the shrinkage of PP. Very technical question. Essentially, the polypropylene that we make will be from a range of materials. And what I can say is it behaves very much like a copolymer grade of polypropylene with shrinkages typical of those materials. So not a big difference to standard materials. We have here a question about, is this any better than chemical recycling? Well, with chemical recycling, I see this as a last resort for the recovery of polymer materials. In this case, we're actually applying mechanical recycling. We're going to be using materials that are in a packaging format. The energy required to recover, recycle, and decontaminate the material to food contact will be far less than the energy required to, if you like, depolymerize to an oil and then fractionate and then repolymerize. So we're going to have a much more carbon efficient process. And I think even the companies who are involved with the manufacture of polymers would see mechanical recycling as the first option. So where we can collect and recycle, that's what we should do. I have a question here. When we'll be able to get trial resin in Australia? Well, the project is slated to start in early October, and we already have trials planned. In fact, some of the trials have been initiated already. So we would expect within the first 6 months of the project that materials would be available for trialing. And indeed, if we have the right participants in Australia, we could see companies here having access to those materials so that they can validate the purity and processability. Okay, this project, another question about the timelines. This project is a global project. We welcome companies from around the world to join in. And even though we may be centered in the United Kingdom, because we have infrastructure, laboratories, and processing facilities in UK and nearby in Europe, this is a global project. We welcome companies from around the world to join in, and we will then make material available to everybody. The knowledge base, the resource base will be global. We already have facilities planned for Asia, and so we expect the outcomes to be in all the places that need food grade recycled PP. We have a specific question about mechanical recycling. Is it more or less than HDPE or PET? Well, to find this out, you have to come and register your interest. Join us on the next step of the project. We want to talk to companies who are really interested, and we're happy to share all of our knowledge in the area of decontamination techniques at that time. But for right now, let's say it's comparable to those processes. To decontaminate plastics, you have to do a number of things, and it's the same for all polymers. So we have another question about markers and labels, and I'm conscious we're running out of time. But why do we not put markers in the polymer? The reason is we put markers on the label is to make sure that in the recycling process, when we remove the label, the polymer is pristine. We will have no false negatives in the next cycle, and this is quite important. And we've got quite a few more product questions here. Is filtration included? Yes, filtration is included. Naturally, this is going to be part of the recycling process. You wouldn't make a recycled polymer any other way. Okay, there are more questions, and I'm running out of time. My team have told me to stick to my time plan, so I'm really sorry, but if I haven't answered your questions, they'll be answered by email, and we look forward to you registering your expression of interest on the NextLOOPP website. The page will be shown for a few minutes when I sign off, and hopefully you'll be able to get that, or just look up NextLOOPP and there's a page to register your interest so we can take the next step. And you'll be hearing from us within the next 2 weeks so we can organise the next step for NextLOOPP. Okay, thank you very much and goodbye, and thank you everyone for joining the webinar. It's a great thrill for us to be part of this cycle of the recycling of plastics packaging, and we hope that we can all join together on this journey. Thank you so much.